A lot of times the small intestine is not in the best condition, but in general, this lower abdominal organ area, that's the soup bowl. So this is where the toxicity lays, starts seeping through that peritoneal, infecting this area. Gravity pulls things downwards. This is why we wanted to focus. Like if somebody's coming in for and they're wanting to do these areas a lot, I normally start with the pelvis, similar to what we did today. We are going to do the abdominal triangle first. So I'm starting in the umbilicus, and I'm going to work in that umbilicus. I'm going to feel like a little knot, and I'm going to try to unhook that knot. After I feel like I worked it for about a minute, I'm going to head my way down, like about 1 inch down and 1 inch to the right is going to be the ileocecal valve. That's what connects the large and small intestine together. And so I really want to hang out on that ileocecal valve for a minute, and then I'm bringing everything into that right hip bone where the cecum is. I'm going to work my way back to the belly button, come down the descending colon to the sigmoid, and across the top of the pubic ledge. I'm going to do that from face to face and face to feet. I would naturally stay there face to feet because I already started the treatment. Then we would do the hip flexors. We're not going to do the hip flexors today because they're already inflamed, but you would do the medial down to the insertion of the tendons, back up, on top, follow it farther out towards gracilis, back up, outside, hanging in that TFL just to be in line with the pelvis. I'm going to do that from face to face and face to feet, and I do it with both elbows because it's really awkward leaning across and coming down on an angle. I'm going to do one hip flexor, both directions, then I'm going to do the other hip flexor, both directions. So I've done the abdominal triangle, I did the hip flexors, now I'm beginning at the cecum, the beginning of the large intestine. I'm going to thoroughly, and I'm giving you guys a specific amount of time. Some people work pretty quickly along because they're also sensitive, and so it's smarter to do laps around the abdomen multiple times, opposed to just going through it once, maybe twice. So I start at the cecum. I'm going to keep the skin taut in the abdomen. I never want to see the abdominal tissue moving like that. You're not doing anything. I keep the tissue taut with my guide hand. I place my elbow. I allow myself to sink into where I feel that tissue just start to push back at me, and that's where I begin my movements. I don't want to see that elbow coming in and out like so, because that'll be that kind of wishy-washy, making them a little nauseous. So I'm starting at that cecum. I'm going to work my way up the ascending colon. We have our hepatic flexure right here. This is going to be the big guy. Liver is hanging out here, and then right behind the liver, kind of tucked in, is going to be the gallbladder. So you're stimulating both areas when you're working that hepatic flexure, and the flexure just means it's kind of like the turn right here. So as I work my way up that ascending colon and I get to the ribs, I keep the skin taut, so I'm pulling that skin on the ribs. I'm placing my elbow right off of it, and I'm getting in deep right in here. Same thing with belly button therapy. I will show you guys on the last day, but people are like, you're allowed to remove it from the belly button. There's no rules with this stuff. So I want you, if you feel like, oh, it's irritating when I'm kind of heading towards my liver, or it's irritating when I'm pushing down towards my sigmoid, I'm going to remove the belly button. I'm going to place the belly button therapy kit in there, and I'm going to pull those adhesions apart in that general area. It's going to help soften and stimulate, so that's going to be beneficial regardless. So keeping that skin taut, I am plowing under her hepatic flexure, so I'm going to be stimulating that liver and gallbladder. I'm really getting under that set of ribs. After I work that hepatic flexure, I want to touch just on that xiphoid process. Don't go too hard on here today. We are doing the breast tomorrow, so we'll be working the sternum and the xiphoid process really thoroughly tomorrow. So I just want you to kind of touch on it. People say, oh, I think I have a hiatal hernia. You don't, that's impossible for you not to know. You're going to have acidity buildup here, and you're going to have scar tissue all around this general area. But if you have a hiatal hernia, like a full-on hiatal hernia, that is the stomach coming up through the diaphragmatic hole, and you're going to kind of see like a little egg sac of tissue here, and it's going to feel really jello-y. That you know when you have a hiatal hernia because you can visibly see it.
Which one is the hiatal one? Where does it protrude?
Right here.
That's where it protrudes.
Yes. So right where I was showing, that's where the stomach's going to have too much inflammation. It's getting pushed up, and it just pops through that diaphragmatic hole, and you're going to get like a piece of the stomach right here. And so I'm really going to focus on that if somebody had a hiatal hernia. After I touch on that xiphoid process right here, I'm coming off, and I'm going to work the splenic flexure really thoroughly. Same way I did my hepatic flexure, but now I'm coming through the splenic flexure. And once I hit that bottom section of the ribs, and that's normally going to come in line with the right above the belly button, this is where your transverse colon, if we look at that map back there, should lay. You can see how it kind of comes up and across. It should be sitting about an inch above your belly button. People over time, as they have a really crappy diet, as they get too inflamed in here, as gravity starts to pull stuff down, too much waste is sitting in here dehydrated and it's not moving properly. That transverse colon, the peritoneal gets really weak. Not only is the waste seeping throughout the large intestine a little bit, it's starting to fall down and out. And so, you know, when you see people with that like extra baggage here, I know that that transverse colon is probably sitting by their pubic bone or just above it, putting pressure on those lower abdominal organs. And that's why we can have like the prolapsus and stuff like that.
So does that mean it like goes in front of the small intestine?
It starts to hang up over. It's like pushing itself down over it. Yeah.
Does it affect the small intestine?
It's going to infect everything in here. If it ain't sitting in the proper form, now the poop has to come up, come down, come around in a U shape, and then come back down. It's not doing its track anymore. If anything is kind of off, if your stomach's starting to hang down and out, we know there's stuff we got to work on because stuff is not functioning properly anymore. And so, once I finished that hepatic flexure, touched on xiphoid process though, and I came through the splenic flexure, I stop at the end of the ribs. I want you to lift your elbow up and place it in line with that transverse colon. I don't care if it's fallen down already. If it's fallen down, that means her liver's inflamed and we got a bit of a fatty liver. It means her stomach is probably bloated and everything is kind of filling in this area now. So it'll be harder for me to do that lift if I don't clean out to where it is, even if it's not there. And if it's there, it doesn't matter, it's great. And you're not really gonna know it's there unless you've done maybe about 50 to 100 abdomens and you've learned the structure of it. But you'll really kind of figure out where it is once you start to get into the lift, because you'll see sometimes when people have like that transverse colon dropping to get that prolapsus area, you're gonna see like this big band of a worm down here that you're kind of stuck on. And then you're gonna wanna get your elbow in there to break down those adhesions even more. So I'm gonna go back to it. Once I stopped at that splenic flexure, I lift my elbow up and I wanna go face to side completely. And I'm going to work my way through that transverse colon or where it should be. Once I come back to the end of that splenic flexure, then I'm coming down the descending colon to the sigmoid, and then I'm coming across the top of the pubic ledge, back to the beginning. And you have a certain amount of time, so you should be doing a couple laps around that abdomen. So the way the direction goes, it's an easy way to kind of think about it, but it's like a big circle, and then we do small circle for small intestine, and then we do directly in the belly button for the umbilicus. But the big circle is the only one that's not a full circle. It's weird because you have to stop at the splenic flexure, lift up, place, and come across, and then down. So burn that into your brain. The big circle, I do almost a full root. I stop, I lift up, I place, and then I plow everything back. People are like, wait, aren't you pulling back right now? But when I go face to feet, I'm going to be pulling that way. So it's going to be going in the way of the digestion anyways. And anytime we stop, we go into abdominal kneading, hand over hand. And I'm always stimulating in a clockwise motion. I don't know how inflamed this was. I don't know exactly what section it was in. So I don't know the way the scar tissue rooted through to bind stuff together. So if you don't play all your angles, you're not going to get it. So yes, I'm pulling stuff back. But anytime I stop to do the abdominal kneading, clockwise, clockwise, clockwise.
So why, if I know, you guys keep repeating the large intestine is the holy grail, large intestine is the holy grail. So what happens if you're not absorbing in the small intestine?
Well, you wouldn't be absorbing in the small intestine because other things are backed up. If one guy's job starts to slow down, it's going to slow the other workers down regardless. And it's not always just going to be the small intestine. It's just other things are inflamed where it's not breaking it down properly enough for your small intestine to absorb it. So it's not just, it might be in my small intestine. It could be coming from your liver and your gallbladder. That's where the bile ducts are to like actually break stuff down. So who really knows? You might not even have good enough hydrochloric acid within that stomach to really break down your foods. So it's going to totally depend. But if one thing's kind of off, I don't focus, and I tell you guys this all the time. We are not focusing on the symptom or the problem that they have. I am looking at you as a whole, because it's not one thing that you did for it to go bad. It's the cascade of things that I've done over the years to create the domino effect of bad, unhealthy healing within my abdomen, and that's why. So, that's pretty much why.
What point we stop to lift our elbow?
End of the splenic flexure, so the bottom of the left side of the ribs. So I do the hepatic flexure, xiphoid process, splenic flexure, stop, lift up, place my elbow, and work through that transverse colon. Then down the descending colon, and then through, across, back to the beginning. And so after I've done that, I'm going to do a smaller circle around the belly button and directly in, because then I want to work the small intestine and then the umbilicus. But I'm going to be giving you guys the timer of how long you can stay in the large circle, and then we go to the small circle, and then we go in. I always finish the areas
Large
first.
circle a couple times?
Yes.
Every time you lift up and go.
Every time you lift up.
And what, tell me again, why are we doing that?
Because I have to clean out the tract from where the transverse colon should lay or is laying. So there's going to be adhesions in the transverse colon area regardless, but if it's still there, if it's dropped, these organs have kind of filled in that area a little bit. They've gotten fatty, they've started pushing things around because they help to push that to drop it even lower as well. So then I'm going to plow through that tract to be able to lift it back up. So after I have done all that from face to face, pivoting face to side, I'm going to do the exact same thing face to feet and face to side. And that will be all of the abdominal clearance. So that's going to be what majority of people are doing. And if somebody comes in and they're pretty inflamed, and like I know, it's not that they're like crazy overweight, but they're inflamed. And it's very tough in here. I don't care about the lift. We're not doing the lift. Yes, we're all doing it on each other today, but the thing is, if you guys, some of you came into me as clients, I wouldn't be doing the lift on you. I would be doing the abdominal clearance. I'd rather pull the adhesions apart and try to get everything to sit properly and flow properly first, and you restruct that area. Because we got to change that cellular structure. So if we're decently okay with the direction of the elbow first, I'm going to demo that, and then I'm going to teach you guys the lifts, because there's like 7 different techniques, and so you're going to forget it if I show it now and even try to explain it. Sounds good? Sounds good. Yeah. I would say the abdomen took me probably about 20 or 25 to remember the actual track completely. So I start with that abdominal kneading, just kind of getting my thumbs in there. You can do the hand over hand. We're going to be doing it at the very end anyways, but it's just nice stimulation. And I'm starting with that abdominal triangle down here. So umbilicus to cecum, back up, then down to sigmoid, and across the top of the pubic ledge. Just what we did this morning.
So if people had scarring,
You hang out on the scars longer. You're going to find way more scar
they're
tissue on it.
not in the areas that, like it's,
How would they not be in this area?
no, I know, but you're doing a deliberate do. So what if they're below that or, above it?
But we're doing the whole treatment. I'm just starting with the abdominal triangle. And if they're down here, that's when I'm coming across the top of the pubic ledge. If they're up by their liver, that's going to be when I'm actually going through it and I'm hanging at that hepatic flexure. So it's part of the treatment. There's no way that they had an abdominal surgery and they didn't do the surgery on the abdomen. So I have to cover the whole area.
Yeah, but you're not covered. It's just like, I had a client, an old man that had gobs of scarring from like 4 different surgeries.
She had a client who had multiple, like 4 surgeries on his abdomen. Okay, but why did you not cover the whole abdomen if that's what we do when we do the treatment?
Prior to me taking
Okay.
the class, but I used to go over it with my elbow because
Yep.
that was
That's
the
great.
only thing hard enough to do it. But I didn't know the pattern to do it, so I just went.
You just kind of did your thing.
in the circle, right?
But that's technically right anyways. So
But they were like thick bands. So would
Yep.
you would spend?
I've had people who've had their whole colon removed.
Yeah.
Like I've had people who have like a 4-inch scar
Yeah.
from stem to stern. And so it's like you're going to hang out along that incision as I'm doing the whole
Okay.
work. You cover this area. So if there's an abdominal surgery in this area, you're touching on it. And we're not going by just, do the routine really quickly. You're going by what you feel. So if I'm heading towards that scar tissue, that scarring itself, and I feel a lot more scar tissue, you're going to hang out there longer. You're going to peel it apart, and then you continue moving along. But it's impossible for them to have an abdominal surgery that I didn't touch because I just covered that whole area. I did the large circle, I did the small circle, and I did in between. While playing my windshield wiper and pivoting, there's nothing you don't touch in here.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just not, I don't know if you're touching it enough to get rid of the scarring.
Why wouldn't you?
Because you're doing so many other things instead of
But
deliberately
why wouldn't
trying
you
to go.
focus that if that was his focus point? Doesn't mean his whole abdomen is just in destruction. You're going to have 2 or 3 spots. It's you're adjusting to the client's needs. Remember, I have to combine some of the treatments. If you're telling me that you have hip problems and it comes into your ischial tuberosity, I'm going to get you on your stomach and I'm going to come into that ischial tuberosity instead of just focusing around the trochanter. Remember, this is a cookie cutter training.
Right.
So you're just overthinking it right now. You would do the treatment and focus on where the abdominal surgeries were, because what causes more scar tissue in the whole body?
Surgery.
You just answered your own question. It's all good. Like, it's great, but like, you're answering your own questions by saying a question that's like, you would focus on that area longer. So I'm starting on that umbilicus and I'm working my way down through the ileocecal valve to the cecum. And playing that windshield wiper